Do you know that promise that you make to yourself at the start of the day, maybe the week, maybe the month, when you're devoted to doing a better job with your self care? And then within minutes, an old habit sneaks in and it bites that plan. How many times has this happened for you? Now consider how many times you may have looked in the mirror, critiqued yourself, your hair, eyes, outfit, your weight, the smile, the teeth. It's endless. Anything is fair game with yourself, right? Well, how do you change those hasty decisions, those sabotaging ways, those patterns that say you're not good enough? Wellness coaches are leading the way in transformative opportunities. They are our accountability buddies. When you don't want anyone too close to you to know that you're doing something different, it becomes like a secret society. And really, you want to be good to yourself, but you just don't know how to get through. This is part of taking care of our well-being, and an accountability buddy through a wellness coach can be a great way to do that. You can make good, loving choices, and you can get yourself to the place of thriving. My guest today, Tom Beeson, is a CTA certified coach. That means Coach Training Alliance. He's a speaker, facilitator, and co-founder of the World Dominator Academy, which he shares with his cat, Samantha. Now, I say that with tongue in cheek because Tom is all about finding your way to conquer the world and to get to the top, so you're dominating. Tom holds a bachelor's degree and is an active participant in the local chapter of the International Coach Federation. As a former engineer, Tom will be sharing the transformative experience that led him from that kind of profession to coaching. And he's a husband, father, and grandfather. Our time is precious. Our worth is vital to our community. Our need to be well and thriving should be trumping our fear of failure and our fear of self-care. You're listening to Be Well with Michelle Greenwell, sponsored by the Cape Breton Tea Company and Dance Debut Inc. And please welcome Tom Beeson. Hello, Tom. How are you?
Great. How are you, Michelle?
I'm good. It's always lovely to have a conversation about how to empower people. And I'm so excited to hear about your story and what brought you forward.
Well, thank you.
To get started with this season, I have been pulling cards from the Affirmations for the Body and Biofield deck. So for those people who are on a podcast, I'm going to hold up a little black card at the moment that has a picture of mother and child on it. It's an abstract version of that, but representing how we hold ourselves and how our family holds us and how our friends and our community can hold us and how we can hold them. And so with that deck of cards, I try to pull a card that can help support our conversation and get people into that transition moment by listening to us and being able to think about how at the end of this podcast, they may be different, how their thoughts have changed. And so the inspiration for today, this card has kind of brown colors on it. Again, for the podcast listeners, there's like a purple funnel that comes down from the very top, and there's two arrows, one points up and one points down. Of course, we can always turn the card sideways, which means the arrows could go side to side. And then we have the way that we might want to transition through things. So you could have that purple cone going up as a crown chakra, but it could also go down into the ground for grounding. This one is actually for the 10th chakra, the Earth Star. And the affirmation is, feel the connection of your inner being rooted to the inner being of Mother Earth. Embrace her resonance, celebrate all Mother Earth offers, and all your body gifts to you. I think that's a telling card for today and our conversation. I also like to bring in a cup of tea, because I want to remind people, take some time. Let this conversation bring you to some reflection points. And I just wanted to bring forward what Tom has today. What's your inspirational tea?
Well, my inspirational tea that I brought with me, Michelle, it's a peppermint flavored tea. It's an herbal tea that's caffeine free because I like to I like to have a clear mind. and my mindset in what I'm doing. I like, but the peppermint tea is a very soothing tea. It's also one that wakes me up, and it brings me, I feel like the transformation, it brings me more alive. Just the smell of it gets my mind going and flowing in the mornings. And so I enjoy a cup of the peppermint tea.
Yeah, and it's beautiful just to sit and just to
Excuse
be
me.
able to take that smell in. Yeah.
Yeah. It's wonderful. I keep the box right by me. So
All right. Um,
but I have
what I'm going to bring forward is a blend called Honeybee. And this one, we actually created it to go with a book that we had written called Bioenergetic Essentials. And that's all just simple little tools to help people uh, make easy changes and de-stress. But Honeybee is made with honeybush, which is a different kind of an herb to add to it. And so I put it into my happy face mug, which has a wink. So I was thinking about you with your dominating academy, and
yes, there we go.
tongue in cheek, and it's about really right getting us past being too serious about ourselves and moving forward. So cheers, Tom. Thank you for joining me on the podcast. I appreciate you being here, and I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you. So do I. Excuse me, I swallowed down the wrong way there for a minute.
Oh dear. Okay. You all right?
Yeah, all good.
Okay, Tom, you started out as an engineer, and that leads you down a science path. It's pretty linear, and something big had to happen in your life to say, I don't want to be an engineer anymore, but also for you to be able to transfer those skills over to what you're doing now. Do you want to start with telling us your story of transformation?
Sure. Michelle, my story of transformation started out many years ago, probably 20, 30 years ago, when I was working. I'm actually an internet engineer. I had helped in the southwestern part of the United States, um, helping companies establish then a brand new internet presence. This internet thing was kind of new to everybody, and very stressful work. It was something that was um, not only stressful, but was people were caught up into it, and they felt trapped in their lives, and they felt like they were tremendous amount of anxieties around the what were fairly new computers and technologies. And one thing that I felt comfortable with was guiding people and helping people connect with their computer, connect with their technology. Okay. Um, I actually helped train quite a few people and students. I worked in the education, and so did my wife, educating in computer science and getting people to understand, that it wasn't really a magic thing, that there really was some science and some practical things to it. So that led me into the coaching, because when I was working with people and making people feel good and making people feel comfortable with themselves and watching a transformation, going, well, this isn't really so bad as I thought it was. As a matter of fact, it's not. At that point, all this technology and computers and science was, I think, had people a little bit, I'll say the word buffaloed. In other words, they were kind of sitting there with their very uncertain and very nervous.
Hmm.
It's the old syndrome. We joke about that. If you have a button you push and you launch all the missiles. Well, that's not true, with computers, and definitely with the internet. So my big transformation came within me when I felt the most stressed. We were financially stressed. We were uh deep in My wife and I had gotten ourselves deep in debt. We had gotten ourselves deep in all the hubbub of life. We were trying to work our careers, and both of us uncertain careers too at that time. And that transformation came when I finally learned some things and discovered some things in the coaching process. My mindset, changing my mind about the way that I look at things differently and reframing things, and helping to go through the mindset of money first of all, and then we transform that into other areas. The mindset of romance, rekindling our romance, rekindling our home life. We decided to get a paint bucket and paint the walls. And what a transformation, just a little bit of color in our house. Before then, all our walls were white. And putting some nice colors in our house, and putting a few things, as you can see, for those on the podcast, I have this green plant behind me. It's an artificial plant, but that green plant is there to remind me I've had that for years, and that green plant reminds me of the transformation that I've made. So, um, and suddenly we started having fun in life, and we got debt free. We got rid of all our debt. We got rid of all our credit cards, and we began to have a practical transformation. And that's where I began to thrive. And that's where my coaching practice actually launched, was helping other people do the same thing, because I saw so many of my friends and so many other people who were really having difficulty struggling with life. And all it took was a plan. We
Hmm.
start with that. And then looking at it in different mindsets, the transformation of the mindsets, and beginning to realize our purpose in life too. We came through one of my courses that I will be coming up with at the end of the March is on knowing your why, not just finding your why, but knowing your why. And so when I come up with this, I'm sorry, end of June. I'm 2 months behind. Yeah, but end of June, we're going to come up with our next iteration of our um, workshop, knowing your why. And once I begin to realize my life mission, my life purpose, the transformation began to really take place. The simple things of why we do what we do, and it's not something that, and I also discovered in that it's not something you spend your life figuring your why. You only spend, you could do your why in about 30, 40 minutes, surprisingly.
Well, isn't that interesting when people will take years? They
Yeah,
just they wander. They can't find
yeah,
it. Yeah.
they can't find it. And then we go through my workshop and we point out, well, it's actually been there all along. You just need to look at it. You just need to turn and take a look.
I'm interested because you said you and your wife did it together. And I know for a
Yes.
lot of people, that is impossible. Some people want to go one direction and their partner isn't ready to make that transition or wants to go in a different direction. But the fact that you did it together and came out thriving on the other end, that's a huge success too.
I think in part it's because we both love peppermint tea. because because we like the peppermint, we like different certain teas, and we drink them together, and that helps um helps us realize, we have more in common. um Obviously my wife is much different than I am, and she does have different thinking. She's an educator. She's matter of fact, today she's teaching a high school class. So we're really enjoying that. But when we do this together, we find that we have a lot more strength in a bond in what we do. And
Hmm.
so coming together to coach people and help people, she has some points of wisdom. She helps fill in some of the gaps that I sometimes leave behind, and so on and so forth, back and forth.
And
And so,
when you first had that idea that you needed to make a change, um,
mhm.
what kind of conversations did the two of you start in order to come together to be able to do that?
Well, those conversations were not easy because I'll go on the money and the finance, for instance. I had some spreadsheets because obviously I'm an engineer and I do math and I put things on spreadsheets. And she would totally look at those spreadsheets. And I have a degree. My degree also has a minor in accounting. So I had an accountant's mindset to this too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then she has more what we call the left brain or free spirit mindset. She would look at these spreadsheets and go, well, this just doesn't do it for me. I can't understand this. What is this? What's going on? And we found a type of budgeting system where we basically, very simply put, you spend all your money on paper before you spend it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
give every dollar, every yen, every franc or Deutschmark or whatever it is, you give it a purpose. Okay. The money that's sitting in our bank account right now is there with a purpose. Okay. We don't just run off and spend it. We
Mm-hmm.
we spend it very specifically. And so once we got to that point, the conversations became way easier. Um, because we actually formed what we call a budget committee. And when we learned how to talk about something like money, then talking about having fun, going on vacation, talking about kids, talking about our jobs became a lot easier, you know, and our careers and our goals. So that's what made it easier to work on. I don't want to center everything around money, but it seems to be what it's the symptom. It's what reflects how our life is and how we're living.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
and we once we realized that it was a reflection of what it was, then we used it to help us feed back and understand what our priorities were, what our goals were. It became a little bit easier to say, well, my goal is to, I want to buy such and such, but we're going to wait until we have the money in the account rather than putting it on another credit card, which was one more painful phone call from a collections.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, we wanted to avoid those. That's where part of that transformation. We went through a lot of pain to get there.
Yeah. And a lot of people will focus on, I need to lose weight. That's where they spend all their extra time in that thought
Yes.
process for years. But like you said, that idea of looking at the finances and they're telling you where you're at, that's a really different concept. And that does nothing to do with how much food are you eating and what kinds of food is it, but it's really telling you about the stressors. Yeah.
Exactly. And part of our program, the World Dominator Academy, and part of what we're doing at TRB Coaching is we actually have a segment on eating healthy. We
Mhm.
want to do that. We want to teach people some very simple, like going to the grocery store is one of my favorite exercises that I have that I walk clients through. And I say, okay, can you walk through the cookie aisle with all those sweets and cookies and not feel embarrassed or not feel ashamed or not feel like I'm going to grab everything off the shelves I can?
Mhm. Mhm.
Second question, can you walk through the cookie aisle and feel free to grab something off the shelf?
Mhm.
And give yourself permission to do some of those things. But more importantly, now I'm going to make you turn it over and look at the ingredients. And if
Mhm.
there's more than 5 ingredients, you may not want that. We put all
Mhm.
these chemicals and you don't want to be a science experiment. Okay. And
Mhm.
then go to the produce section, eat from the rainbow. I never realized it took me a long time to open my eyes walking in a grocery store and realizing how colorful just the color in the produce section
Mhm.
and beginning to realize that color was going to be my friend. You know, I'm
Yeah.
not I'm not afraid of the greens. I'm not afraid of the purples. I'm not afraid of the orange, you know.
Yeah.
And to find all my wonderful vegetable friends that I call them my friends because they're like medicine to my body. They help me, you
Yeah.
know. And
Exactly.
so and I've lost some weight. I used to weigh a lot more than I do now.
Yeah. And I'm interested too that you had said you'd gotten the can of paint and took down the white walls and brought some color into. So it's so you know that even that idea of you are spending the money to surround yourself with things or to do
Right.
things, and yet by very simple transition you were able to bring the color up in your world and make it more vibrant. And that didn't cost you anything. That was money that was really going to be spent anyway on other things. So,
Yeah. It was money well spent because when we walked into our house now, we feel more at home. We have different colors and different things that we not only connect with, but soothe us, comfort us. Um, it feels like a place where we want to be instead of walking into um your home sometimes. Forgive me if I'm going to use the word institutional,
mhm,
because where else have we seen white walls? I
mhm,
used to work at a hospital, for instance. I learned this at the hospital that I worked with when they began to paint the patients' rooms, and they began to realize that people got better when there were not white walls in a hospital room.
mhm,
Okay, when they would use colors, and the more cheery, colorful hospitals are actually the ones people prefer to go to heal. Okay,
mhm,
that's just one example of that.
mhm,
So, and we would have accent walls. If you look at the wall, that is behind me, this is a nice peach color. It may be off on my camera, but I'm staring across the room at a complementary purple. Okay,
beautiful.
and it
I
just
have
and it
dark
just makes all
blue,
the
and the
difference.
other side of my room here is light blue. This is like our ocean. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
and at night, when the light fixture casts shadows that looks like ripples on the water, so I feel like
Uh-huh.
I live about 5 minutes from the ocean, so I don't see it from my house, but I can feel like it just from how I surround
Exactly.
myself. Yeah.
And that little bit. Now obviously the paint, I mean paint is not cheap, but that can of paint, the 30, $40, the $100 that we spent painting made a huge difference in our lives and our energy.
Hmm.
Not only our energy, but in our thoughts. We were calmer. We were it's very transformational. It's very
Hmm. Hmm.
transformational when you can do that. Okay.
Hmm.
And you mentioned stuff. We were collecting all this stuff. And one of the things that my wife got me into, at first I was kind of not quite sure this is what I wanted to do, but yeah, we had a lot of stuff in our house. And we got into doing simplified living. We started going into and realizing that all this clutter around and all this stuff around was actually depressing us. That was part of our mental health, and mental health is just as important as physical health.
Hmm.
So once we started, emptying off some shelves, and once we started having a few less things on the wall and a few less pieces of furniture. Now that was interesting because we had so much furniture that we couldn't hardly move around, and it made things, just it made a huge difference, in our lives. Just the simple fact of decluttering.
Hmm.
We love to cook. My wife and I both love to cook, and I remember the first time I decluttered. We have two drawers, one where we have the sharp knives and the other where we have the serving utensils.
Hmm.
And I took it on myself to go ahead and get rid of a bunch of those serving utensils and knives that we really were never using. And it was amazing to have the drawers only half full instead of completely full, and you couldn't open the drawer because something was always sticking there. Okay.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, to me, that was, first of all, a strange experience, but a wonderful experience just in our cooking space. And now we enjoy cooking even more.
Hmm.
So still have a lot of pots and pans, but we're getting there.
Well, and there's always those recipes where it calls for almost all of them.
That's exactly true. That's exactly true.
Yeah,
So
that's the gourmet part, right?
yeah, but we started cooking more and eating out less too. And that
Mhm,
was not only a money, but a diet transformation too.
mhm, mhm,
And we enjoy eating in, and doing and finding fun recipes to make. So
mhm, mhm. Um, Now, you did this together with your wife. How, you're a father and a grandfather. How have your children watched and benefited by what they've seen transform for you? Because you're going to be a role model for that.
mhm, mhm. Well, my daughter and son-in-law currently live with us. We're in a multifamily place. And so they watch it and they're beginning to learn because we're having set an example. Like, for instance, they're just starting out and understanding the basics of life. Okay, life skills. This is one part of our one part of our coaching program that we do with TRB coaching. It's a main part, is actually teaching life skills that you never learned, that you were never taught.
Mhm,
So finding those life skills about how to, like, manage money, how to cook, how to care, you know,
mhm,
really is very important for young adults. And we have young adult children. Both my children are grown, but they're in their early 20s.
mhm,
And so we have two kids. I have a son and a daughter. I have a son. He doesn't live with us. He lives in Arizona.
mhm,
And but he's beginning to start his own life out, just getting out of school and working. And I think they see, it transforms them because they see the working attitude that we work at it. First of all,
mhm,
they see that my wife and I, we're lovers, not fighters. Okay.
mhm.
So if we fight to love, but
Yep.
um, tongue in cheek there. So basically, it's helped them come along. Now my daughter has two little grandchildren, 2 years old and 3 years old, and they run around the house, and I just have a blast with my grandkids. you know of course, they're both toddlers, and so we like to see, as they start to grow up, we like to see how they respond. Okay,
Mhm,
they're
mhm.
messy, but um sometimes you have to go through a messy part of your life to get it clean.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And if you're
yeah.
going to have a different viewpoint, you have to do those kinds of things.
You have to do those kinds of things.
Gets
You
you
have
out
to
of
work
your
your way
own
through.
mold and yep.
And
Yeah.
they're free to have their own viewpoint, their own whatever they want. They're to be their own. So
Yeah.
we pretty much stay out of their way now.
Best part of grandparenthood, isn't
Yes, it
it?
is.
Oh, all right. So you've talked a little bit about how you and your wife have made all that transformation possible, and you do coach together, which is wonderful because a lot of us in the industry do that on our own, and our spouses or partners have different, uh, completely different lives in the business world than we
Yeah.
do. Um, so do you want to talk a little bit about, you started a little bit about how you complement each other, but also the whole process of how you bring your program together, because you're in the education field as well. So that's another perspective.
Yeah, we're in an education field as well. I'm just going to put a little cheat sheet up here so that I have this. So basically, my wife and I both, we can coach together or separately. Most often I do all the seminars and all the workshops, and she's often in the background because her degree is in instructional design,
Hmm.
and so she's a instructional designer. So she helps write a lot of the courses.
Hmm.
And that's one of the things that complements me. But one of the things that we do our coaching, we have a 5-step process that we go through in our coaching and our big program. Um, so we call it a lead magnet, or something that brings people into us, is knowing your why, and that's a free webinar
Hmm.
that we teach. But when we start our actually program, we start with a plan. We start with your best life ever plan. Okay. Because one of the things that we discovered early on was that if life is unplanned, it's often miserable. You know, that if you don't really have any type of plan for your life, even a rudimentary plan, your life gets very miserable, and it can get out of control. Things can go out of control, and then you're like an airplane, you're spinning down, you're about to crash. So the very first thing we start out with in our coaching program and our paid program is we start with a life plan. And we work on that basically in the major areas, life areas. We find through feedback that we've gotten from our clients, money is always a problem. But again, as I mentioned earlier, it's a symptom,
Mhm.
it's not the problem, it is the symptom of or reflection of that. So first thing we do is we tackle the money things. We work the wheel of life, which means that we have to measure. If you can't measure something, then it's very difficult to plan for it or set goals. Okay. So we're very heavily into goal setting. And for instance, what do we want to do for vacation? My wife and I never talked about in early years, talked about going on a vacation together. And suddenly we realized, well, we really need the rest and the relaxation and the fun. And at the time, my wife was working as a travel agent, and she was working on a cruise line certification. So she had gone on a couple of cruises together as a salesperson, selling cruises. But then she took me on one of these, and that was a lot of fun, you know. And so we realized that we enjoy getting out and doing things. We enjoy travel. We travel around the state. We travel around different places, and we would take little mini vacations, little weekend jaunts, little weekend trips. Currently we live in Wisconsin, so up in Wisconsin in the U.S., there's this peninsula called Door County, and it's up north of Green Bay. So it's right on Lake Michigan, where Lake Michigan goes into, I believe that's Superior,
Mhm.
okay, in the
Mhm.
Great Lakes. And we just went up there and rented a cabin for a weekend. And we had the most fun, took our dogs with us, and we had the most fun of that. We want to go back again and again.
Mhm.
And now here's this healthy eating tip. Okay, if you go to Door County, they have cherries. They have cherry groves up there. And they make the best cherry pies. And so my wife and I, while we're up there, ate an entire cherry pie and didn't feel at least a little bit of guilt.
No, no, never with a fruit pie.
It was like we were having fun. So we start with a plan. We start with learning to play together. And then in our careers, we begin to realize we need to do the work we love and understand the work that we love.
Mhm.
So our five step starts out with the best plan for your best life ever. Then we get into one of the problems we were having was handling life crisis or life emergencies. So the washing machine would break down, or we'd have to replace a water heater, or we'd have to replace a tire on a car. Something would happen. And as soon as we got to where we could take care of emergencies and actually saving money, putting money in our bank account, because cash would always get us out of an emergency way better than a credit card would. It was weird, but we had credit cards, and whenever one of these emergencies came along, it's like the banks knew, like they had this radar or something, and suddenly our credit card would get shut down, or our credit card would we'd have a credit limit, or we'd have some problem, you know. So, but when we kept cash in an account, the emergencies got very easy to work with and handle, and we had far less crisis in our lives because
Mm.
of that. I don't know how it works, but it just does, And so we have what we call an emergency fund, where we keep in a separate savings account. We don't get to touch it, quite readily. We actually have to go to the bank to withdraw the money, but it's there. It's there.
But is that something for people to know? Because it's such an interesting concept, right? We always think if you have the credit card, that's your security. Because if you need money, you
Uh-huh,
always
uh-huh.
have access to that option or the line of credit. Um,
Yeah. Generally, if life's flowing and going great, if you're talking about I want to take a vacation, it seems like the credit just flows. But if
mhm.
suddenly you have to replace a hot water heater before your vacation, no, you're done.
Yeah, yeah.
That's weird. It's strange but true. You know.
Hmm.
Well, the best vacation we ever took was one we paid cash for when we were able to pay for the full cruise in advance. We didn't have to finance it. And all that wonderful food that we ate on that cruise, didn't follow us as far as interest payments too.
Right.
So we were done with it. We enjoyed a vacation and we began to spend more cash on vacations than we did credit. Okay. So that's how we got debt free. That was just one of the things that we used
Yeah,
to get debt.
yeah.
But I call it emergencies, easy emergencies, gas in my chainsaw, money in the bank. And gas in my chainsaw is a reference to a movie that was very popular called Sharknado.
Hmm.
Okay, and I don't know if you've seen the Sharknado movies or not. Okay,
No.
they're very classic. If anybody's seen Sharknado, there's the guy with a chainsaw standing on a New York taxi cab as this shark goes flying through the blade of his chainsaw. And I think he was saying like this is New York or something like that. He was
Hmm.
he was saying that. But if you're prepared for emergencies, gas in my chainsaw could be that your neighbor's tree just fell on your house, or something like that. But
Hmm.
if you're prepared for certain emergencies, it's not just the money in the bank, but it's also understanding what am I going to do. If our washing machine breaks down, we have this wonderful laundromat just 3 blocks away from us. Okay, so and so we know what to do, how to adjust our lives
Hmm.
so that we can adjust our lives quickly to get back on track slowly. Okay.
Hmm. Hmm.
Then we help people get debt free. We look at those money issues and we look at those priorities. This is all in line. We have in our step 4, doing the work you love and to love the work you do. I actually did quite a bit of career coaching.
Hmm.
So I've done some work on doing the work you love. Um, you don't have to be miserable in your job. You don't have to be miserable in what you do for a living in life, and you can actually have some fun with it.
Hmm.
Okay. And when I realized the work that I love is working with people, not so much the computer servers. I love doing the computer servers and I love being part of that network engineer, but I knew it wasn't going to last. And
Hmm.
working with people and others was lifelong. So,
And it's interesting too when you say you knew it wasn't going to last, because I think sometimes um, when we get into our profession or we get into a job, we see it, going this way and thinking that's
exactly.
it, which then because it was our trajectory and our thought process, we don't know how to veer off. But when we
Yeah.
realize it's one place of going, but there are so many ways that you can move through it and around it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. And you can do things that you never realized and dreamed of doing,
Hmm.
and have more fun and actually have more satisfaction, Michelle. So we really worked on that. One of the things that was kind of transformative in my career from my transition from engineering to coaching, um, I've technically said that I've retired from IT, actually, did some retirement. Okay. Because it's one of those things where your learning curve, your learning, it goes so fast and the technology changes so quickly. Helping people handle that change, that sudden change in technology. But I was also seeing a change in my career at the same time.
Hmm.
So I began to realize there's a book out there, Who Moved My Cheese. Um, suddenly I had the author's name in mind, and it suddenly slipped my mind. I'll think of it.
And you said, who moved the cheese?
Yeah, Who Moved My Cheese? It's a little book. It's a short read, but
Mm-hmm.
it's the best read ever. Okay, Who
Okay.
Moved My Cheese? And so you want to find that book on Amazon or find it at your favorite bookseller. And Who Moved My Cheese was about this mouse who suddenly the cheese was there all the time, and suddenly one day it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And he had to lace up his tennis shoes and start running the maze and start running around to find where the cheese went. Okay. And he found it. But sometimes in our lives and our careers, our careers move out from under us. Okay. Suddenly the job that we really enjoy doing is no longer there. Whoa, what do you do now?
Mm-hmm.
And so you always have to kind of be looking for, do I have other opportunities? The other thing that I was going to mention too was that as far as the work you love, once I understood my purpose was more working with people, then it was real easy, not only easy to make that transition and find my life's mission in working with people and helping them adapt, because it's all about adaptation.
Mm-hmm.
But I find out how being more adaptable in life made me more resilient toward all the things that life was throwing at me.
Mm-hmm.
Hence, I'm going to go full circle back to the peppermint tea that I have. Okay.
I love it. You can go back to tea anytime.
I can go back to tea anytime because the peppermint tea, when I look back and look at the times in my life where I was uh, finding it easy to change and realizing change, I was having a nice cup of peppermint tea.
Mm-hmm.
Every once in a while, my wife would join me. We both have a nice cup of peppermint tea, think life over, and say, okay, hey, we're going to go do this. This looks more fun. This looks more interesting.
Yeah. And
So,
it's funny you say that because we have someone that lives here with us and she's back and forth depending on her jobs. Um, but what happens is the kettle gets put on. And when the kettle gets put on, everybody comes out of their respective office spaces and
yes.
everybody comes together to go, oh, what are you putting on? And then there's a little conversation, a little bit around the kitchen. How's everything going? And then off we go again. But we have that touch base point where we stop and go, oh, there is more to life than this project I've been focused on. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
simple, simple.
Just take a minute to clear your mind and enjoy and just breathe and
Mhm,
enjoy life.
mhm,
So our fifth step is to fortify your castle. And that's a good little segue into, okay, you've had a busy life, you're going through all this, you get your finances straightened out, you get your job straightened out, the work you love. Now, what's the next step? Breathe.
mhm.
Just take a minute and enjoy, because if you don't enjoy life, you know, I have two little grandkids, and it's fun to have time with them to enjoy.
Mhm.
And I think one thing my wife and I that helped in our lives is we would just sit down together and watch a movie, and we would just talk. Um, in our business life, we have what we call a daily squirrel. Okay. Squirrel is, we have in Wisconsin, we have a lot of squirrels, and our dogs are always alerted to them. Squirrel, you know, it's all around there.
Mhm.
Well, our daily squirrel was something to say, okay, let's just sit down, have fun, and chase some thoughts together. Or let's just look at the squirrels, okay, and watch them as they run across the ground in the trees. But we would have just a moment just to sit down, relax, and breathe and
Mhm.
fortify your castle. That part of our course is how to make your home a place where you can just sit down and relax and go, ah,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
you have a way of saying, okay, the day, I'm just going to let it all wash away. I'm going to let my mind wander wherever it wants to wander, as long as it comes back.
Yep. Yeah.
Sometimes my mind wanders off. It doesn't exactly come back, but that's okay.
Well, and that's to that time in the kitchen. You know,
Oh, yes.
when you wash the dishes, loading the dishwasher
Yes.
is a chore. But when you're washing the dishes, it's reflection time because you're not moving very far.
Exactly.
Um,
My daughter, you mentioned earlier, how does that affect my kids? And my daughter sees me in the kitchen washing dishes. And she's like, Dad, no, I'll get those. You don't have to wash those dishes. I'll get those. Oh no, honey, I got them. But it's my turn to wash dishes. Well, yeah, you're on our little board for chore board here, but um that's okay because I need my hands in the dishwater soap.
yep,
Okay.
yep.
So yeah, so it's fun. You actually have these chores that suddenly become kind of fun and relaxing.
Hmm.
So, and it makes my daughter feel guilty. Wahahaha.
That's when you say,
I am
please
that
go
I
do that
am
other
that
task.
world dominator, remember, the little dominating. Okay.
Yep, yep.
My little granddaughter did that one time. She was going into trying to crawl up our attic stairs, and I said, "Nope, you cannot do that." And she turns around, takes one step up, and goes, "Wahaha." I said, "Oh boy, okay."
She says, I've learned from the best. Hey,
I
Grandpa?
learned from the best. I learned from the best. And so as a bonus, we also learn to play again.
Hmm.
We learn to play again because a lot of people have forgotten how to have fun and enjoy life along the way.
And I think, too, with the pandemic and so much of us working from home and still working from home, or
Yes.
our lives completely changed, and that's our new job. Um, you know, when you're working in the house, there's a guilt if you're not working because it's like, well, if I just sit and do nothing, I could be making some money if I go and sit at my desk. But to
Exactly.
actually create the space and the time where you say, I don't have to be working now. I've already planned for being finished. I've planned for me to now have this time to myself and
Exactly.
celebrate.
So
Yeah.
that's at our company when we do the TRB coaching, one of the things that we always learn is if it's not fun, it's not worth doing.
Hmm.
However, on the flip side of that, sometimes there are things that are worth doing and they may not be fun,
Hmm.
but they are worth doing. And so you do them anyway.
Hmm. Hmm. Yep. There's a great quote sitting right there.
Thank you. I just came up with that. That just came to mind. I don't know why.
That's perfect. It's perfect. Oh, it's lovely to talk with you and hear the humor and the seriousness in the work that you do, but also the humor and the passion and the love that comes with it. It's
Thank
yeah, it's fun. And I've really enjoyed hearing how you could do that together as a couple and
Mhm.
that it does take work,
Yeah.
but that when you honor each other's gifts that you both bring to the table to create that vision forward, um, your rewards are amazing. What kinds of vacations can you take? um, you know how do you enjoy your day in the house when you're
Uh-huh.
together? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Getting in trouble. I'll sell you one more quote here. Getting in trouble with someone is a lot more fun than getting in trouble alone. So and when my
Uh,
when my son-in-law comes in the house and sees what my granddaughter has done, he fusses at me. I don't know why. As we've both gotten in trouble.
oh, I love it. I love it. So I always try to finish a podcast with something about movement to get people
Yes.
going in a different direction. Have you got something that you could share with the people listening today?
Well, physical movement, and also mental movement. But I like to share with the as far as the movement, my favorite exercise is I call it the dog pet. So it's hard to see my feet under the thing, but I always have a dog laying at my feet.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm moving with my feet, petting my dog. Now, when my dog is not there, I still do this. Okay. I what I do is I lift my feet up, lift my legs up, and then I move them from side to side, just like I'm petting my dog. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I also have a stand-up desk, a desk that, raises up.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's very important to not be sitting all day long. I
Mm-hmm.
find that when I'm standing at my desk, I actually get a lot more done and a lot more mental energy. For some reason, sitting down, it all hits the bottom.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, literally on the chair. Okay, so my
Yeah.
bottom's. So when I'm standing up, it all goes to the top. So all my thoughts and
Yep.
energy goes to the top.
Oh,
So that's
interesting.
that's my movement tip for the day. But just sitting here, and you may not see this, but I'm sitting here like I'm petting the dog with my feet
Yep.
and just moving my feet back and forth, and that's helping the blood flow.
Yes. Yeah. And I refer to that as dynamic sitting because
Yes.
um, because if you do choose to sit and just sit, then you're frozen in time and you're frozen in
Yeah.
your thoughts, you're frozen in the decision making process. And it doesn't take much movement to completely move that and shift
Yeah.
you into a different space. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I try not to hunch over my computer so much either. I try to work
Mhm.
back from it as well. So posture is very good for me.
Yeah. Yep. And I'm sitting on a stool at the moment because of the room that I'm in to do the podcast. My chair at my desk is actually a wood hard surface, flat bottom,
Uh,
no
uh-huh.
padding. It's very straight, but I actually never sit with my back to the back of my chair. I'm always sitting up straight, and that was a decision I made that I didn't want to uh, compromise the balance of all the muscles in the core by relaxing back into my chair. So I'm always sitting up with um, my own
Yeah.
energy. Yeah,
That's it.
yeah, yeah. I wanted to share one movement habit, and this is something my husband does, and he started doing it a few years ago. But he goes outside at the end of the day, so it's in the dark. It could be snowing, it could be raining, it could be anything, but he'll just go and stand out on the porch and he'll just breathe in the air. And we live out in the middle of the country, so we have
Yes.
the moon, the stars. We can have silence some days.
Uh-huh.
Some
Uh-huh.
days we can hear the animals off in the distance, or a herd of cows might be one field over. But he just spends a little bit of time completely being present with outside instead of inside where we've spent most of our day.
Absolutely,
Mhm.
absolutely. If you don't get outdoors and breathe the fresh air, and I love to go stand on my porch. I'm there with your husband. I like to go out and just do that and
Mhm.
just stand there and have a cup of coffee. And then in the mornings, watch the squirrels
And watch the squirrels. Ours is
and
usually
watch the
listening to
squirrels.
the doves that are on the barn next door because they're
Yeah,
quite
there
noisy
you
first thing
go.
in the
Oh,
morning.
the sound of doves cooing. That's
Yep,
wonderful.
yep. And then
I
the fox is going across the field on their run for the day. Yep.
I hear the sound of city buses, but that's okay.
Thank you so much for sharing this time, Tom, and talking about how your program has developed and the content that you've put into it to really bring people forward in many aspects of their life, not just focusing on the things that most people think about. If I could just lose this weight, if I could just get to the gym, those are the usual thoughts. But there's just so much more that you've brought to your program, and I love the fact that with your skills and your wife's skills, she designs courses. So she knows how the
Mhm.
content works for it to be effective. And
Yes,
that I
that's our secret
appreciate
sauce.
that depth of background that can go into a course like what you offer. How can people
Thank you.
find you?
They can find me on our website at trbcoaching.com. And TRB stands for Tom and Rebecca Beeson. My wife's name is Rebecca, but trbcoaching.com. They can also find me on Facebook under Tom Beeson. And we'll be hopefully putting in the Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn links. I'd love to chat with people on Facebook or LinkedIn. feel free to reach out to me. But if you go to our main website at trbcoaching.com, there's also a way to reach out too. So,
Perfect.
and love to chat with people. I like to connect with people. So
Perfect. Great. Thank you so much, Tom. It's been a great morning.
thank you. I really appreciate. Thank you for having me on your podcast.
Season 3, we're devoted to the transformational process that happens when people reach into their authentic selves and create magic. Our season has several publications this year, and we hope the different vantage points and conversations inspire and empower you to consider living your true heart's desire with love and compassion for others at the forefront. Thank you for joining us. This is Be Well with Michelle Greenwell, wishing you the courage to face your own transformation for well-being of those around you as well as yourself. Take care.
Thank you.